So now we're moving on to the mouth. I began by just cutting out a nice long piece of wire and attaching it straight to the end of my nose. Of course, you can start anywhere you want with this. Some might want to start at the chin or use the cross armature to attach it and start there. You could start anywhere. I wanted to build off of the idea of creating the illusion of shadows with line, and by doing that I was considering that I have smile lines, so I built that into my face. Here's where I start to move into the bottom of my mouth. So this kind of emphasizes where my chin starts and where the bottom of my mouth will be. I think a big step that we had to take while completing this project was creating the line portraits digitally on the iPads. Of course, you can attempt to do this using household materials. What I would recommend is after you print out a picture of a portrait, set that aside and look for some wax paper. You can tear out a sheet of the wax paper that fits right over top of the portrait, and then take a Sharpie and trace around your portrait, at least what you can see, and try and do some continuous line drawings and get those simple stylized shapes and contours of the face. This acts as a really good reference for your wire portrait, as it shows where the lines are and which ones are really important to show using your wire to sculpt. As I'm demonstrating here, it's really important to be attaching your wire where you can to the armature so that you don't have any loose ends and things hanging and dangling. Makes for a much more secure and stable project. So at this point I needed to problem solve and come up with an idea on how to make the corners of my mouth. This was challenging because I just didn't know how to do it, and it took a little bit of problem solving and trial and error to figure it out, but I ended up just pinching the end of my wire and twisting it around, and really I just flipped the pinched part and made that the corner of my smile, because there's sometimes some shadow in the corner of your mouth that I felt like I could emulate with that shape, the little loop there. So as you can see, I'm attaching in as many spots as I can so that it's stable and secure. And throughout this whole process I've been shaping with my fingers, but it was especially a challenge when I was doing the lips, just to keep everything even and symmetrical. Here I'm starting to add the line that separates my top from my bottom lip. Something that's important to think about while you're doing this is that as you're kind of sewing your wire through the other wires, you want to be mindful of how you're bending it as you're pulling it through. So if you just try and pull it through like it's a string, it's going to get tangled, and it's going to bend the wire in ways that are frustrating to fix. So if you are thoughtful as you're sending it through and going to pull it in ways that is advantageous to you as you're working, it will help you more in the end. So here I'm just making some final touches, shaping the wire with my pliers. I could do this with my fingers and pinch it a little by little, but if you have the resources, use them. And sometimes you need to bend the wire in order for it to fit into loops in order to attach it, and I think that's what I had to do here. But don't be afraid to kind of change the shapes and contours of your wire as you go, because you can always reshape them and bring them back to the way you wanted it. Sometimes when you're reshaping it and you have to change or alter what that line looked like, it can bring about some new discoveries of how you can stylize your portrait and make it unique. So sometimes you just have to go with what is happening with your wire and see what you can do to make it something you want it to be.